Hello everybody, welcome back to the CAS Talks. Thank you very much for joining us. Now, we've just watched the extremely high-level grand opening of the Climate Adaptation Summit 2021. It was there were leaders from all across the world. It was more a case of who wasn't there. So I think that was a very impressive way to kick off the summit. During this CAS talk, we're going to be reflecting on what happened. We're also going to be looking forward at what are the actionable points that came out of that, because a lot of promises were made, and now we need to make sure we know what needs to be in place to actually ensure that they're fulfilled. We'll be officially launching the Race to Resilience. And we'll look ahead to a few more upcoming events of the Climate Adaptation Summit 2021. It's a packed program, so don't even think of clicking away. Better still, get in touch with us. Use the chat function on the CAS platform and use our Twitter hashtag, which is, Vicky, what is it?
It is #Adaptation Summit.
Exactly, Adaptation Summit hashtag. And remember, compliments to me, complaints to Vicky, please, okay? Keep it that
not
way.
again.
Okay, before we go on, I have two guests, Vicky and another guest who I'd like to introduce shortly. But before we do that, let's have a look at a video wrap-up of that opening session. Oh, I'm just hearing that the video wrap-up is not actually ready yet, so we're going to move straight on, but I promise we'll get to it. So, just keep your seatbelts on for the moment. Mr. Sijbesma, Mr. Feike Sijbesma, thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Good. You said correct. Okay, I've passed the first test. I got your name right.
Absolutely.
That's a good start. You're the Honorary CEO of DSM, and you're also the chair of the Global Center on Adaptation.
Correct.
What were your impressions of the high-level opening that we just watched?
I think very good, because the governmental leaders, they showed clearly, collectively, that they get it. Mm-hmm. That they get it, that climate change is impacting our life. We anchored our approach in the Paris Treaty, how to mitigate climate change. In the meantime, we're not fully on track. In the meantime, climate change is continuing to impact the life of many, and especially the most vulnerable. Mm. And in order to not only to focus on mitigation, but also to address the impact already today, we need to adapt as well. And like Prime Minister Rutte during the conference, and several governmental leaders repeated that, said maybe we should split the total financing between mitigation and adaptation in a 50-50 way. And that means that there is a strong commitment for adaptation. And I think the developing countries would really want us to do that, the developed world as well. So what we try to do is develop best practices that they can use, that they can roll out. And if you live in Ethiopia or Bangladesh or one of the island states, you need the adaptation tools desperately right now.
Yeah. There's no time to waste. And Vicky, what about you as a youth reporter at large? Was there something that struck you in particular?
Yeah, there was one quote, and I have it written down, so I will just read it out loud. Young people have done the least to contribute to climate change, yet they will suffer the most. Yeah. And this quote is from Nana Akufo-Addo, so he's the president of Ghana. Mm-hmm. And I think it sums it really good up, like what we as young people experience. And I think it's an acknowledgement for all the young people. We really want to do our best to contribute to the climate adaptation. Yeah. I think this is a good quote.
Yeah, absolutely.
I agree with you, and it's good you mentioned that quote, and that means also, per definition, that this generation has a responsibility as well, not only to have a good life themselves, but to take care of the next generation, and that's basically what the quote says.
Definitely. Yeah. And one thing I just enjoy, because I love the moments when the leaders show a bit more of their human side, they're not just reading from pre-prepared statements, was just the joy at the US re-engagement with the climate community. The president of the IMF mentioned it, and then I saw Antonio Gutierrez chuckling to himself. Everyone is just so happy to have the US on board. So that was great. Okay, I'm assured that we do now have the video wrap-up, so let's run that to give you guys a better flavor of what happened if you didn't watch.
During this summit, public and private sector partners from all over the world will present solutions, actions, and best practices on resilient infrastructure, on delta development, on food security, on resilient cities and disaster risk management. And there will be a special focus on the leadership of youth and the adaptive capacity of the African continent.
We need to start building a better future now. The Paris Agreement recognized that mitigation and adaptation go hand in hand, that they are two equally important building blocks towards a sustainable world that leaves no one behind. Over the past 2 years, the Global Commission on Adaptation has worked hard to elevate the importance of climate adaptation.
We need the trillions of taxpayers' dollars funding the recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic to jumpstart the low-carbon, high-resilience future we need.
Young people have done the least to cause climate change, and yet will suffer its impact the most. Across Africa, the continent with the world's youngest population, we must scale up the solutions that deliver green jobs and resilient livelihoods.
Adaptation is not an option. It's an urgent task for the benefit of this generation and those to come.
I'm today launching an all-new Adaptation Action Coalition, which is a joint effort between the UK, Bangladesh, Egypt, Malawi, the Netherlands, St. Lucia, and the United Nations. So, let 2021 be the year that we fight back, not just against climate change, but the effects of climate change that are already being felt.
If we take care of Mother Earth, she will continue to nurture us. This sentiment should guide our way forward.
C'est pourquoi il nous faut, dans l'esprit de l'accord de Paris, faire preuve d'ambition et de solidarité. Il en va de notre responsabilité à tous et de notre responsabilité à chacun. Mais il est tout aussi important d'accélérer la mise en œuvre d'actions d'adaptation sur le terrain afin de réduire la vulnérabilité de nos sociétés.
我们要树立你中有我，我中有你的命运共同体意识，坚持多边主义，开展适应气候变化国际合作。
President Biden has made fighting climate change a top priority of his administration. We have a president now, thank God, who leads, tells the truth, and is seized by this issue. And President Biden knows that we have to mobilize in unprecedented ways to meet a challenge that is fast accelerating. And he knows we have limited time to get it under control.
Climate resilience is a critical priority. And this is why we place it at the heart of what we do this year and in years to come.
With the GCA as the AAI leads coordination partner, GCA will work to implement the vision and roadmaps of the AAI.
The World Bank Group plans to invest over $5 billion over the next 5 years to improve livelihoods and restore degradation. This investment is a major contribution to the Great Green Wall.
We welcome the launch of a new Young Leadership Program to bring together the next generation of leaders to help tackle climate change. So thank you to everyone for joining us in this fight, and thank you to the young people for stepping up and getting involved. Together, we will build a cleaner, safer, and more competitive world.
We're pushing for a revolution in planning by providing technical guidelines, assistance, and capacity building to local governments to incorporate adaptation actions in their strategic and territorial planning process. In the spirit of the Article 2.1c of the Paris Agreement, we are driving a revolution in financing by designing a funding strategy to scale up adaptation actions on the ground.
We are promoting locally led adaptation that can bring forth tangible solution for the vulnerable communities in different countries of the world.
And I expect that the Global Center for Adaptation, Africa, hosted by the African Development Bank, will be a key partner in this particular endeavor.
My late mentor, Kofi Annan, the former UN Secretary General as well, once told me, the only promises that matter are the promises kept. Let's turn words into action, hope into reality, promises into financing for Africa.
That was definitely a quote that stayed with me as well. The only promises that matter are the promises that are kept. We've heard a lot from leaders around the world then. Let's look at the private sector because they have also made a lot of promises. In your experience, Mr. Sijbesma, why is it so important, first of all, to get the private sector on board when it comes to climate adaptation?
Private sector need to take its responsibility in mitigation as well as adaptation. In mitigation, the private sector need to fill its part of the Paris Treaty, and that is science-based targets, reduction targets, being transparent about climate-related matters, influencing you, preparing on a price on carbon, and even embracing all those policies. That is where the private sector needs to be on the mitigation side. On the adaptation side, it's also the private sector's responsibility to take care of the most vulnerable states or the most vulnerable countries or the most vulnerable generation on climate change, and therefore we need to adapt. The private sector can do that also in its own interest, to protect its own supply chains, to grow economically. If we address climate change via adaptation, we can achieve 0.7% at extra GDP growth globally. We can provide jobs, millions of jobs. So it's in their own interest, but I think it's a moral responsibility as well. And listen, business never developed, the economy never developed for making money. The economy started as a barter trade. You do better this, I do this, and we exchange goods, and we need money as a facilitating tool. That is the way the economy has been growing, should grow, and need to continue. So automatically, if you use that economic model, it is just a responsibility for the private sector to contribute as well.
I think I completely agree. I think if everyone had been doing that, though, we wouldn't be in the mess that we are now. So some people are not doing that. You've made it a personal cause, I think that's fair to say, to champion faster, accelerated change to help the climate. Is that what it takes to get the private sector more on board, leaders to really have a kind of a change of mindset?
For me it is a combination. I couldn't run a company by only focusing on the shareholders' value or only focusing on making money and not for the next generation or not for the planet or not for societies. I could not look into the mirror doing that. But increasingly, doing well, doing good, can go hand in hand together. Doing well as a company, but doing good for the world. And what we did in our company is transform our company, focus more our businesses, our innovation on addressing the SDGs, also in the belief that on the long run, the world is not stupid. Maybe on the short term, sometimes we make stupid mistakes, but on the long run, we will correct ourselves and we will address the SDGs. And therefore, if you find the solutions addressing the SDGs with better nutrition or better oceans or addressing climate change, at the end there is a business model as well. People will pay for it, the world will pay for it, because the world wants to make the world a good place to live for many people, for all people. So it makes good business sense, and for me it is just a logical moral obligation as well.
Yeah. And about that business sense and the moral obligation, was it always like that for you, or was there a moment that kind of triggered a change, a personal moment that triggered a change in mindset?
It started early in my career, and I had the advantage that I made very fast career in this company, DSM, and a predecessor company. And I thought in the beginning, I thought that's good, making career. And then I thought, hey, you have the impact on 10, on 100, on 1,000, on 10,000s of people. And I asked myself, if you have impact, and what are you going to do with it? And I asked that question to myself at a young age, and I thought, hey, if you have the ability to have an impact, you need to show the responsibility as well to do something meaningful, purposeful with that impact. So, and that influenced the way I would like to lead. I led our company, changed it, and trying to contribute to society.
Great.
And some people, what I was annoyed sometimes, that people said, but what is your real agenda behind it? I said, this is my real agenda. No, what is the hidden agenda? I said, I want to contribute to a better world. Yeah, but you're a businessman. And then I say, it's not that after high school, all the people without a heart went to business. That's not true. There are very good business people who have a heart as well and want to contribute to a better world.
Yeah. Great, thank you very much for that. And you're going to stay with us throughout the session today, so we'll be hearing more about that. Okay, for all of our viewers who didn't manage to watch the high-level opening, rest assured that you can watch everything back by heading to the CAS platform, and that'll be available in 4 hours' time. And you can also watch the high-level opening on the different social media channels as well. Check out the YouTube channel. Okay, next up, before we hear from our next guests who are joining us via video, we have a video message from Secretary General of the Global Commission on Adaptation, His Excellency Mr. Ban Ki-moon, who was in the opening session, as you saw there, and he provided a keynote address on the subject of this CAS talk as well, and why we need a race to resilience.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is a great pleasure to speak to you today. We have seen over the last year how the COVID-19 pandemic has collided with climate shocks to create a set of cascading risks. Evacuating populations from the path of cyclones and hurricanes incurred the threat of contagion. Borders closed, threatening supply chains and increasing the risk of greater hunger in Africa. And as the state and trends in climate adaptation report shows, funding for climate change adaptation was cut back, halting the progress achieved so far in building climate resilience, curtailing our ability to deal with future climate shocks. When I initiated the Paris Agreement on climate change 5 years ago, I put adaptation on an equal footing with mitigation because they go hand in hand. They are our peace pact with the planet. There is no plan B because there isn't a planet B. Climate change acts as a risk multiplier across all sectors. But the converse is also true. The more resilient we are to climate shocks, the better we will be able to deal with other risks, including deadly pathogens. Race for Resilience is an incredibly important initiative. The world now has a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to build a climate-smart future by integrating climate adaptation into their response and recovery plans. At the Global Center on Adaptation, the organization I chair, we are working closely with the African Development Bank on a flagship African Adaptation Acceleration Program. We hope it will help to put climate adaptation and resilience at the center of African policies and institutions so we can have a sustainable future that leaves no one behind. I believe that if we work together, we can adapt our world to ensure we can meet the Sustainable Development Goals and protect the world's most vulnerable people. and I look forward to offering my support to you in the run-up to COP26 in Glasgow. Thank you.
Great. Frank and powerful messages there from Secretary General His Excellency Ban Ki-moon. Right, it gives me now great pleasure to introduce the Right Honourable Mr. Alok Sharma, the incoming president for COP26. And I must say how pleased we all are, Mr. Sharma, that Mr. Johnson, Prime Minister Johnson, has allowed you to devote all of your time to working on COP26. So we're very happy about that. Also joining us in this session is Mrs. Patricia Espinosa, who, as the head of the UNFCCC, has a vested interest in all initiatives that will help contribute to a hugely successful COP26 in Glasgow. So thank you both of you for joining us. Mr. Sharma, let's start with you. Please tell us tell us a bit more about your ambitions for the COP26 presidency, and of course, please officially launch the race to resilience.
Great. Well, thank you very much. And if I may say, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, I would really like to thank the Netherlands for hosting this excellent summit. We've heard some brilliant submissions and real power to the messages that have been coming through. And of course, I also want to thank the Global Centre on Adaptation. So you've got my friend Feike with you. And of course, Secretary General Ban Ki-moon for his leadership in adaptation and resilience. And I can tell you that from a COP presidency perspective, for me as COP president, this is a top priority indeed. And I know that it's the same for my dear friend Patricia Espinosa, who you will hear from shortly as well. And building resilience into our economies and societies is absolutely urgent. And it's also essential if we're to protect human lives and livelihoods from the effects of our changing climate. And ultimately, it requires all of us to act together, whether it's governments or cities or regions or businesses, investors or civil society. All of us have to act on this issue. And of course, there's a great deal of fabulous, fantastic work that's already going on around the world, from cities like Port Moresby investing in trees and mangroves to protect the city and its people from coastal flooding, to the Coalition for Climate Resilient Investment, which represents around $10 trillion in assets, driving private finance to fund resilient infrastructure and helping investors to understand climate risk, which is so vital. And of course, today we are launching 2 new campaigns to focus efforts and make progress faster. This morning, as you will have heard, Prime Minister Boris Johnson announced the Adaptation Action Coalition with our partners Egypt and Bangladesh, Malawi, St. Lucia, the UN, and of course, the Netherlands. The coalition will bring governments together to accelerate action ahead of COP26. And of course, now it's my particular pleasure to launch the Race to Resilience campaign. This is a campaign which will mobilize businesses, investors, cities, civil society, and others to act, bringing together initiatives with the aim of building the resilience of 4 billion people across the world. That's representing over half of the world's population by 2030. The campaign will support activities delivering for people and nature, for example, cities protecting people against heat waves, or smallholder farmers utilizing climate resilient technologies and restoring deforested and degraded land. And I'd also like to thank our 2 brilliant climate champions, Nigel and Gonzalo, for the incredible effort that they have put in to make sure that this initiative happens. And I do think that together these 2 campaigns can make a real difference to the scale and pace of adaptation resilience across all our economies, indeed across society. So I want to finish with an ask to everyone who's listening and watching this. The ask to governments is please join the Adaptation Action Coalition. And to businesses, to cities, to civil society groups, please join the Race to Resilience and help us working together to build a more resilient and better world. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that appeal and a very clear message about the urgency with which we all need to act. Let's go over to Mrs. Espinosa, who, in fact, I think, Vicky, you probably have a question for Mrs. Espinosa.
Yes, I have.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so I have one question. How will initiatives like the summit and the race to resilience ensure that we all can live in a 1.5 degrees resilient world?
Thank you, Vicky, for that question. And let me start by saying that the Paris Agreement calls not only on governments, but also on regions, cities, business, investors, and civil society to align with it and to increase action. And in fact, even if governments would want to do the job on their own, they would not be able to do that. My dear friend Feike has eloquently explained the important contribution of the private sector. The same applies to cities, to regions, investors, etc. But to involve everyone, we need to build and develop capacity. And we need also to show ways and where the means are to thrive under the rise of climate change risks and threats. And therefore, summits and campaigns such as the Race to Resilience and today's meeting are crucial to help build and develop this capacity. It truly is inclusive multilateralism in action. Addressing resilience and minimizing the climate change impacts is then the responsibility of all. And yes, climate change impacts poor and most vulnerable people the most. But leaving them to fend for themselves cannot and will not be an option. And this is also why this meeting today is so important, mobilizing support. Now, we have also to be very clear that this is not about helping the most vulnerable. Climate change impacts us all. So increasing adaptation and resilience is in everyone's self-interest. We know the disruptions that climate change causes: food insecurity, displacements, migration, hunger, instability, and more. So how can we not make it a priority? I would like to stress UN climate change's strong support for the race to resilience, and I want to congratulate the climate champions for launching this specific campaign on resilience. It needs to translate into specific deliverables at COP26. Clear signal that we are progressing towards keeping the global increase of temperature at safe levels. And I also want to particularly thank the COP26 presidency for the announcement today of the new Adaptation Action Coalition, together with Egypt, the Netherlands, Bangladesh, St. Lucia, and Malawi. This is the type of leadership that we need to see around the globe. And I join the call by Minister Sharma for all countries to join this coalition. I call also upon all non-party stakeholders to join both the Race to Resilience and the Race to Zero campaigns and to bring concrete outcomes to COP26. The world will be looking at us.
And Mrs. Espinosa, you mentioned the urgency of mobilizing support for all of these clear deliverables. As someone who has seen COP presidents come and go, and you know all the personalities involved, what advice would you give to Mr. Sharma to ensure that his presidency is a huge, resounding success?
Well, you know, I'm very, very fortunate to have just a very open and very, very friendly, permanent dialogue with Mr. Sharma. And I think he's really doing a wonderful job. And by the way, as you said, I also welcome very much the fact that he will be dedicating 100% of his time to this very difficult task of bringing almost 200 countries, the world together, to deliver an amazing outcome. The point I have made many times, and I can repeat it here, is that finance is really key for a successful outcome at COP26, particularly adaptation finance. And that we need to see it as an investment in our future, not a cost or a burden. And I'm very happy to say that when I look at the initiatives by the COP presidency, I can see that they recognize the importance of raising visibility, of raising attention, and raising the ambition regarding adaptation.
Mr. Sijbesma.
Yeah, I found it an interesting question you had. Please, Mrs. Espinosa, what advice you could give to Mr. Sharma of making the COP a success? Patricia Espinosa and Alok Sharma will be two key people during the COP. And the COP need to be a success. But I would say, instead of asking them or advising them how they can make it to a success, it's asking the communities, businesses, NGOs, countries, what can you contribute to let Mr. Sharma and Mrs. Espinosa shine and make a success during that COP?
Absolutely.
And that is the call I would say. How can we all take care that they can make a success out of it? Because that would be a success for all of us.
Yes. Okay, thank you very much, Mrs. Espinosa. Perhaps we can get some more input on what the community can do from our next couple of speakers, because as Mr. Sharma eloquently explained, the race to resilience would not exist without the tireless work of the climate action champions from Chile and the UK, Gonzalo Munoz and Nigel Topping. And Nigel is in fact with us live. I think. Yes, there he is. Thank you for joining us, Nigel.
Yes, I'm here.
Can you tell me, well, first of all, congratulations, because this is something you've been working on for how long?
Well, we're about 9 months.
Okay, oh, your voice is hoarse, so it's been that hard work. You've talked to so many people, had so many Zoom meetings. Okay, but listen, what was behind your decision to put people and nature at the heart of the race to resilience?
Well, first of all, it's really great to hear the words from the Secretary General and from COP26 President Sharma and from Executive Secretary Espinosa launching the Race to Resilience. Gonzalo and I launched the Race to Zero last June, and it very quickly became clear to us that, as Secretary General Ban Ki-moon says, mitigation and adaptation and resilience need to be two equal building blocks. And so we decided we needed to launch a race to resilience. And we've spent time, actually I may sound hoarse now because I am speaking a lot, but actually we've been listening a lot to those leaders working on resilience in cities and communities around the world, in Latin America, in Africa, and in Southeast Asia. So it was really listening to them that convinced us that we needed to put people at the heart of the race to resilience, more so than the Race to Zero, which tends to be a bit more about technology.
And what about how the campaign can be a catalyst for non-state actors to help achieve the goals for resilience?
We often talk about what we call the ambition loop. That as governments get more ambitious, it makes it easier for others to raise their ambition. And of course, if lots of businesses and cities are in action, that makes it easier for government. So it's sort of feedback loop. So what the idea here is to highlight the best initiatives on resilience and then put them under this umbrella of the race to resilience, so that fundamentally we want to bring more awareness. I mean, as Feike also says, we can't just get to zero emissions and not take care of what needs to happen to make communities more resilient all around the world. So the idea here is that we'll be bringing together, and the great news is we've already got about 30 initiatives joining, which businesses, cities, investors, regions and civil society groups can join to play their specific roles in building a more resilient future.
Yeah, and can we maybe elaborate on that? As Mr. Sijbesma suggested, what can the community do to help you achieve these goals?
Two things, really. The first, those who are already working on great initiatives on resilience, which has often been the poor relation to mitigation, so we're trying to raise it up. we've got an expression of interest now to invite those initiatives to join the Race to Resilience. So that's the first thing. If you're running an initiative, let us know about it. Let's see if we can get you in. And then once we have the first 10 of those initiatives announced, which will be very soon, that will be an opportunity for businesses, cities, all those community actors to join those initiatives so that we can get 10 times as many people working on resilience as we have at the moment and raise the profile, so that as Secretary General Guterres says, we can then also see money, so that's both public and private money. He talked about the trillions. Sometimes we even think we might need a race to trillions, so that the money can flow at scale to solutions in really what is an act of global solidarity, because that's what we're going to need now for the next 10 years, to see the whole world and the whole society to come together to build that resilient net zero future.
Clear. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Topping. As you've said, we need both races to succeed in order to deliver a 1.5 degree resilient world. And you mentioned your fellow climate champion, Mr. Munoz, and we've got a short video from him, and that'll be preceded by two other videos. First, from the governor of the port of Moresby, Powers Parkop, on why the race to resilience matters from a city perspective, although you touched on that yourself. And the second video is from Ms. Sheila Patel, who's the founder of Shack Dwellers International, on why the race to resilience matters to people and communities worldwide.
Port Moresby is proud to be a member of the Global Covenant of Mayors and officially joining the Race for Resilience. Cities around the world are facing the impacts of climate change every day. Port Moresby and other island nation cities are combating rising sea levels and other threats such as deforestation. We are taking action such as reforesting our lands, protecting our mangroves and coral beds, and creating city-to-city collaboration to protect our vulnerable communities. We know that striving towards net zero emissions is important, but preparing and adapting to the impacts of the climate crisis is the most critical action that many cities are faced with today. The Race to Resilience campaign is an opportunity for cities and mayors to step up their commitments and demonstrate the need for immediate action. Port Moresby is excited to join the other cities of the world in this crucial Race to Resilience campaign that is vital to the future of our planet.
This last year has shown us the combined challenges that those of us who live in cities, especially informally, face. On the one hand, the pandemic has shown us that there is unprecedented crisis that we have to deal with, for which we have no answers, no solutions, and no strategies. And the development deficit now leaves almost 4 billion people in need of basic infrastructure and services, produced in a way that ensures that there are no additional carbon emissions. The race to resilience is very important because it demands from all of us a commitment to become a change maker, to help our institutional arrangements transform themselves. And I'm delighted to be part of this campaign where Nigel and Gonzalo are leading us through a process where they will bring all of us together to make this long-term investment in adaptation that produces serious resilience.
Well, many thanks, Powers Parkop, Governor of Port Moresby, and Sheila Patel, founder of Shack Dwellers International, for those excellent words. It is really great to have your support, as you are so well experienced leaders that know exactly what needs to be implemented in relation to infrastructure, nature-based solutions, finance, culture, everything that is needed in order to gain the resilience that we require. So Nigel and I are so much looking forward to work with you on the race to resilience. And as Nigel said, through this campaign, we're concretely aiming to reduce the vulnerability to climate impacts of billions of people. That's what it's all about. We will say it over and over. We simply cannot let those predictions of the impacts of climate change to become true. It is unacceptable to let the prediction of 100 million more people push into extreme poverty by 2030. It is absolutely immoral and unacceptable to let the number of people who lack sufficient water to increase to 5 billion by 2050. It is unacceptable for millions of people in coastal cities to be driven from their homes. So we know we must take action to stop these predictions becoming a reality. And this is not only for moral reasons. If something we've learned from COVID-19 is that building resilience is also the best economic strategy to avoid disruptive shocks. That's why we're deeply committed to make Race to Zero and Race to Resilience a total success. And for this to happen, we need all actors of society taking action and increasing their ambition now. Not tomorrow, but now. And we are already receiving overwhelming interest from initiatives across the world willing to join the campaign. This is why the Race to Resilience has been launched today at the Climate Adaptation Summit alongside the Adaptation Action Coalition to mobilize action by states. I want therefore to thank and recognize the leadership of the government of the Netherlands for having the foresight and dynamism to host the summit and to have it focus on action. Thanks also to the incoming president of COP26, Alok Sharma, for your leadership, and you really can count on our support as high-level champions for the success of both Race to Resilience alongside with Race to Zero. Also, thanks to Kristalina Georgieva for your excellent words, and the Executive Secretary, Patricia Espinosa, for your invaluable guidance and support permanently. You know, with Nigel, we are determined to deliver, so hold our feet to the fire. A final big thank to the Global Center on Adaptation, the Global Resilience Partnership, and the Adrian Harsh Rockefeller Foundation Resilience Center at the Atlantic Council in support of this launch. Let me close reinforcing Race to Resilience is a call to action, and we are willing to see many of you joining us on this race. Thank you very much.
Another great statement there. Very powerful and passionate speaker that he is. Mr. Sijbesma, another quote that stood out for me from the opening was one from Frans Timmermans, in which he said that we need to make sure international solidarity is real and credible. How do we make sure that all the pledges being made, the promises, are kept?
There is no police agent for the entire world. Should there be? I don't think there should be. That would be even dangerous. So it is our own responsibility. And here you call on something difficult. If nobody controls you, if nobody can dictate you to do so, are you still willing to keep your promises? Like Ikenna Azuike said, only those promises really count. And let's be clear. During the Paris Agreement, 200 heads of state signed the agreement. And many NGOs and many business leaders. And 5 years later, we need to conclude that although we signed up, although we committed ourselves, we are not totally on track. And the next generation will at the end pay for that. And we need to take care as our responsibility that we come on track with the Paris Treaty, the race to net zero on mitigation. And since climate change is impacting now already the most vulnerable, and things, like you say correctly, solidarity is important, therefore also the race to resilience. By the way, for the developed world, and take Europe, also again in your self-interest. I mean, we are struggling already today with immigration out of Africa into Europe, and we cannot handle that. Well, if we don't take care that Africa can take care of itself, then this problem will only increase. And understandably also, to be honest. And therefore, please, I would hope that everybody who makes the pledges today takes the responsibility as a good parent, as a good caretaker of your family, of this planet, of mankind and society, of your own promises. Otherwise, how can you look into the mirror every evening?
There's a lot at stake, people. But today's Race to Resilience launch and the Race to Zero, which was launched 9 months ago, are two hugely positive steps in the right direction. And we'll be discussing lots more over the next day and a half. Vicky, what else is coming up over the next 24 hours?
Oh yeah, there is a lot. So the event on accelerating African adaptation is taking place as we speak. Yeah. So it's in the next room. And the anchoring event on disaster risk management is also going on right now. And the last session I know of is the nature-based solutions, and that will continue until 18:30 Central European time, of course.
So lots for you all to watch. Is there a session that you'll be attending, or are you interested?
Well, we contribute to the natural solutions and especially to the African Acceleration Program. How can we make food production in Africa more resilient? How can we grow our crops even in periods of drought? Can we change the seeds? Can we change the fertilizers? Can we change the water management in drought periods still to grow our crops? So the interesting thing of the sessions that Vicky mentioned is that they are touching solutions, technologies, innovations, how to implement those. And I think that is what we need.
Yeah, solutions-focused approach, agreed. It's been really enjoyable speaking to you, having you here, hearing your words. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vicky, of course, for joining me. We'll be back again later today.
Later
final
today.
session?
Yes.
Yep. We've reached the end of this CAS Talk, in which we've looked back on the high-level opening, and we've looked forward to the future anchoring events. So don't forget you can also check out the side events at CAS on the CAS platform, which include the cinema. There's a possibility to download or just watch a lot of content.
Videos. Yes, so there's a lot of content online in the cinema, and it's on all the sessions. So just pick out what you like or what you're interested in, and then start watching.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Very good.
Thank you very much, everyone. We'll see you again soon.
Thank you. Thank you.